ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया अस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिवा ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति शङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति 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 आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य मानि ईस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रन्नो अपि वातयमनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो विद्युश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्मानं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं हगो tam tagumha devamatma buddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha. Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vasishtham Shaktim cha Tatputra Parasharancha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padmapadam cha Hasta Malakam cha Shishyam Tam Totakam Vartikakaramanya Anyanasmat Gurun Santata Manatosmi. Om Vishwam Darpana Dishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bhairivot Bhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bijasyantarivānkuro Jagadidam Prāṅnirvikalpam Punaha Maya Kalpita Desha Kala Kalana Vaichitrya Chitri Kritam Maya Viva Vijrambhayat Yapi Mahayogi Vayasvechaya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Yasyaiva Sphuranam Sadatmakam Asatkalparthakam Bhasate Sakshat Tattvamasiti Vedavachasa Yo Bodhayatyashritan Yat Sakshat Karanat Bhavenna Punaravrittir Bhavambho Nidhau Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Nana Chidraghatodara Sthita Mahadipa Prabhavaswaram Jnanam Yasya Tu Chakshuradikarana Dvara Bahispandate Janamiti tameva bhantam anubhatye tat samastam jagat tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Deham pranamapindriyanapi chalam buddhim cha shunyam viduhu Stri balanda jadopamastwamiti Bhranta bhisham vadinaha Maya Shakti Vilasa Kalpita Mahavyamoha Samharine Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye. Namaste, let's start the class. I thought before we continue on with our introduction to the actual sutras, one thing we might do, which we have not done yet, is to look at examine the books and the commentaries that various people have written and make some comments about it. So I thought I would spend a few minutes doing that. I have some collection of books that I wanted to show you and share with you. So let's start with that. One of the students, Amit Garg, had written to me saying that he has seen a lot of commentaries on Brahmasutras, and he wanted to find out the validity of them, and I was going to do that anyway. So let's get into that. So First of all, there are a number of commentaries, and I think the one that Amit had talked about and so on. So there are a number of them, like for example, in addition to the Shankara Bhashya, some other commentators have also commented on Brahmasutra, including Ramanujan on the Vishishta Advaita. So that's called Shri Bhashyam. He calls it the Bhashyam. And so that's one of them. Then there is a Bhashyam by Madhvacharya, which is called Anubhashyam. And so that's no, I'm sorry, that's not called Anubhashyam. Anubhashyam is a different one. So Madhvacharya has a Dvaitam. I don't remember the name of it, but that Bhashya is also there. And then there is a Vallabhacharya who has written a Anubhashyam called the Shuddha Advaita Bhashyam. And so there is a number of them that are available. And in fact, if you go to Wikipedia, and a caution on Wikipedia, I think you may have seen a recent attempt from people to come up with a purer form of Wikipedia. Because what is well known now is that the Wikipedia is being an open forum, allows for a number of people that have a wrong impression, or perhaps an incorrect impression, perhaps a slightly incorrect range of different conceptions that people comment on. And there's a lot of Western influence on it and so on. And the general feeling is that in doing so, the truth gets trampled over. So the truth is not subject to majority. It's not as many people comment. They may not be truthful. So there is in fact a new Wikipedia being started, which I'm very supportive of. I think it's called the Dharma Wikipedia or something like that. I've recently seen some. So all I'm saying is that you should not just take the words of Wikipedia and say this is correct. It may not be. It may be correct, it may not be correct. Anyway, going back to the commentators, all these commentators, according to your question, Amit, they should be called Astikas. They are not Nastikas, they are all Astikas. And I think I won't go into the segmentation of Astikas and Nastikas as we've already done so, but these commentaries are all Astika commentaries. But they have a significantly different view than what the interpretation of Shankara, this is the Sampradaya we are following, Shankara and Badarayana and so on. So a different view of that. I'll give you just one example. Okay, you take this. You take the Indian ghee. Now, the ghee, as we all know, has two very distinct states of being. One is that at room temperature, and especially if you refrigerate it, it is very solid. In fact, if you take a ghee from a refrigerator, that we sometimes do, and you try to scoop a spoon out of that, it is very difficult to do. It is that solid. On the other hand, if you put the ghee on fire, on a pan, very soon you find that the state of the ghee changes completely. It becomes very, very liquidy and flows. So this is the situation. So now there are commentators who would say that these two are distinct states of the same thing. And they have different views, they have a different propensities. One is solid, the other one is liquid, and so on. Or there could be a view that really is the same thing. It is not any different. Ghee is ghee. And how it behaves in one state versus the other really doesn't matter. And so there are differences in this view that happens. The Sampradayic view is that the jiva, even as you see it, is a non-jiva. It is not really a jiva, it is really nothing but Brahman. It may behave like a jiva, that's a different thing, but you cannot call it a distinct jiva. Whereas in the Vishishta Advaita's sense, the jiva has its own life, you have to sort of deal with it, and then when you come up with the right sense of vairagya and so on, then it becomes a non-jiva. Whereas the Sampradayic view is, our own Sampradaya is, that even when it is a jiva, even when it appears like a jiva, it is not a jiva. That is the thinking that we have to really do that. You don't accept it as it is. Due to prarabdha, as we will talk about in more detail, it may appear to be a solid thing and so on and so forth, but it really isn't. Anyway, I don't want to go into a tangent on that. We will discuss that some other time. All I'm saying is that, because the question arises, how come there are different commentaries on the same Brahmasutra? This is the thing. People have a slight different view of it, and they may be right, they may not be right. We don't. And in fact, I think in the Shankara Bhashya, all of this will be examined in great detail. The view of the Sankhyas, the view of the Vishishtadvaitis, all of that will be done in view of that. So anyway, so that's one thing. Let's now move on to not the various separate commentaries, but the various tikas of the Shankara Bhashya. See, there's a difference. So one is that there are different bhashyas, and obviously what we are following a certain way of looking at things, which is the Sampradaya, and so that is, now we have already agreed to it, let's just follow the Shankara Bhashya. Okay? Now, within the Shankara Bhashya, there are commentaries on the Bhashya, which are called tikas. And so these tikas all differ from each other. There are various ones available. There are different schools of thought. There is a Bhamati school of thought. And there is a Vivarna school of thought. Those are the two main schools of thought. And they are pretty much agreed to the Sampradayic view, but they have some differences with respect to where the ajnanam, the ignorance lies. Is the ignorance lies with the jiva, or is it the ignorance that lies with Parameshwara in his Maya Shakti? So there are some differences about that. It's called Tula Vidya, Mula Vidya, all of those kinds of things. They are much more minor and almost not recommended to go into at this stage of our life. If you're a sannyasi and you understand the whole thing and you just want to have some fun to see what everybody says about it and how to do it and so on, you may want to look into that. It's really not necessary to look at all of them and so on and so forth. So there are some very famous tikakaras who have commented on it. So I will go back to my notes from Swami Dayanandji from he has made some very good comments on this. Yeah. So Swami Dayanandji used to say that he had not used to say, he said it here, that the very famous ones are the Bhamati school of thought, which is also seconded by one Amalananda, and the name of that is Kalpataru. So the Kalpataru is also a very well recognized tika on the, all this is on the Shankara Bhashya, not on the other Bhashyas. Then there is one called Parimala. Parimala means fragrance. And this was written by one Shri Apyaya Dikshita, etc. And then there are notes on the tikas, which is called tippanis. Lots of tippanis and so on. Now, these are all the various ones. You know, the main thing we should do is to say, if you are interested in further analyzing Shankara Bhashya, which one should you follow? That's what really I want to really get into. And so this one is recommended by our acharyas. And in fact, I never studied Sutra Bhashya with Swami Chinmayananji, because for the first couple of years when I was really close to him and so on, we had never gotten down to that level of detail. If Vishwanath, if you are listening, if you can find out what his favorites were, I think that would be a nice thing to do. But I'm giving you Swami Dayananji and all of his direct Shishyas, Swami Paramarthananda, Swami Viditatmananda, and all of those other ones. They all say that the tika and the tippani that we should follow is called Ratna Prabha. Ratna Prabha. A beautiful name. Ratna means a jewel. Prabha means the light of a jewel. The jewels, if you put the jewel in any kind of an ordinary light, it really glows. That's the beauty of jewels. This is what's called Ratna Prabha. So now, the Ratna Prabha is the name of the tika. And the name of the author is uncertain. Amazing, isn't it? Such an important one, and we are not sure about who wrote it. The general thinking is that there is one Swami Govindananda, who is the author of Ratna Prabha. Anyway, Ratna Prabha takes into account the Shankara Bhashya and also the commentary on it by Anandagiri. Anandagiri is very highly respected. If he says in terms of explanations, we should really follow it. So what Ratna Prabha has done is to take both the Bhashya and the Anandagiri Tika and made a commentary on it which is intelligible to us. It's called Ratna Prabha. That's the one if you are interested in following. So I have I just wanted to show you this. There is a book here. You can see this. It's called Shankara Bhashya Ratna Prabha Bhasha Anuvada Sahita. So this one is a book which the Ratna Prabha has been translated into Hindi. This is, if you are a knower of Hindi, highly recommended. And so in those days, I bought this in 1980s, right after my time in the Percy Ashram. And so this one at that time came with, I think, 5 or 6 volumes. So each one of them is about this thick. And so I think I've gone through about maybe half of it, maybe 3/4 of it so far. And some of them repeatedly. And so this is a very useful thing for Hindi-speaking people. I am very sure that other translations in other languages is available. I have not looked into that. But if you are interested, it's not necessary to really study it. Just the studying of the Shankara Bhashya itself is enough. But if you are interested, then you may want to look into this. This one now has been translated into a single volume which is about this big, and it is available from Amazon. Very expensive. It's like $90. I think I looked at it the other day. And so if you are curious, you may want to look into that. The book that we are going to be following is the translation of the Shankara Bhashya itself. It has no commentaries or anything, by Swami Vidyaranya. And I think I've already written to you about that. That also is not strictly necessary. I think if you just follow the class and so on, you don't need to do that. But suppose you want to confirm some of the languages that we are using in terms of something written down, then this one is recommended by Swami Vidyaranya. There is a book here by Swami Visheshwarananda, and this one also, I have not studied this, but this was also bought by our staff during the PRC ashram days. So I assume that this was okay. So you may want to look into that if you're interested. But I think just the Gambhirananda is enough. You don't need to get multiple ones. So this is another one. I wanted to show you one other thing. I guess I have it upstairs. I didn't bring it down here. Vayasika. Okay, I should mention a couple of other things. This one I have not studied, but Swami Vidyaranya, which I personally respect a lot. I get a lot out of Swami Vidyaranya's teaching, especially in the Panchadashi. His language, his explanation, his examples really speak to me and to a lot of other people. I have a lot of respect for him. Swami Vidyaranya has written a book called Adi Karana Ratnamala. Adi Karana Ratnamala. So, Swami Dayanand said that what this book is, it's a very, very useful book for some of you that are interested in that, is to take each adhikarana. Now by this time you should be familiar with the term adhikarana. So think about it. How many adhikaranas are there in the Sutra Bhashya, in the Brahma Sutra? 191. And what is an adhikarana? Adhikarana is a specific topic, a specific concept, set of concepts called a topic. This is called an adhikarana. So Swami Vidyaranya has written a book called Adi Karana Ratnamala, where he has composed 2 verses for each adhikarana. So 191 times 2. And so the first verse is a Purva Paksha. And the second verse of the Adhikarana is a Siddhanta. Beautiful way of presenting it. So, we had already talked about it, that in the way the Shankara Bhashya is taught, that each of the Adhikarana is talked about in 5 different terms. You remember what that is? Vishaya, 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 Purva Paksha, Siddhanta and Samgatihi. These are the 5 different sections. Here he has simplified it by just making it into 2 verses. Purva Paksha, Siddhanta, Purva Paksha, Siddhanta. Purva Paksha means a doubt, almost like an objection. And then the Siddhanta means an answer to that. This could be, I haven't had the time to do that, and I'm unlikely to do it because I now have a certain understanding about the whole thing that I am not likely to find enough time to look into that. Maybe, who knows. But anyway, that's an interesting book that you could do. There is another book which is called Vyakaranam. No, sorry, what is the name of it? Yeah, it's called Vyasika Nyayamala. Vyasika Nyayamala. This is the name of the book. And that I have, and we have studied it. I had gone to some classes with Swami Vidyaranya in the Anaikatti, and this is the book that he had followed. And so Vyasika means of the Vyasa. It is the sixth case of Vyasa, is called Vyasika. Nyayamala. Nyayamala means a logical explanation of the Brahmasutra. This is called Vyasika Nyayamala. Again, it's a much shorter form, and it's available with some translations. And if you're interested, you can look into that. Anyway, I've spent quite a bit of time on this, and but I wanted to give you all of the literature, amazing amount of literature just on Brahmasutra. Leave aside the rest of it. Incredible. And it's just so much fun to see the consistency, the depth, and the breadth of the thought on all of this. We're very lucky to have this kind of a genealogy of literature. Anyway, so with that, let us resume our introduction to Brahmasutra. So what we had talked about last class was that the 555 sutras are divided into 4 chapters called Adiayas. Adhyaya is the Sanskrit name for a kind of like a chapter. Adhyaya means a major collection. So when you have a chapter, it may have various thoughts in the chapter, but they have an overall sense of all the thoughts in a given area, and that is called a chapter. So similarly here in Adhyaya, there are 4 Adhyayas that contain multiple Adi Karanas, and of course multiple sutras within the Adi Karana. So one interesting thing, the first 4 sutras are also the Adi Karana. First 4 sutra is, so there is 1 sutra per Adi Karana in the first 4 of them. Later on, each Adi Karana has multiple sutras. But in the first 4, there is 1 sutra for the Adi Karana, and each Adi Karana is the name of the topic. So I just wanted to let you know that my commitment to teach this class is for the time being limited to the first 4 Adhikaranas, first 4 sutras, Chatussutri. So this is called the four sutras. And after that we're going to pause and see whether you want to continue, whether I want to continue. How is it going? So anyway, so this is the situation. The first 4 sutras are special because they have 1 Adhikarana per sutra. That's how important they are. Later on you have multiple sutras for each Adhikarana. Okay. Going back to the Adiayas, 4 Adiayas, the whole 555 sutras are divided into 4 Adiayas. Here are the 4 Adiayas, and here is what they are meant to convey. Okay? So the first Adhyaya is called Samandwaya Adhyaya. The second one is called Avirodha Adhyaya. The third one is called Sadhana Adhyaya. And the fourth one is called Phala Adhyaya. Samandwaya, Avirodha, Sadhana and Phala are the names of the 4 Adhyayas. Here are the reasons why they are done the same way as it is. Samandvaya Adhyaya is devoted to examining all the various thoughts in the Upanishads. It may not be 100% of the Upanishad because the Upanishads are countless. We have actually lost a lot of the Upanishads because of the oral tradition. It has not been kept up. But we have a minimum of 108 Upanishads that are prevalent and easily available. I have a 3-volume book that has all the 108 Upanishads. Amazing. I went through that one very quickly. I couldn't study all of them. But there's just incredible breadth of Upanishads. So 108 Upanishads are there. So in the Samandvaya Adhyaya, not all the Upanishads are taken up. That's not the objective. But the objective is to take the kernel thoughts of the major Upanishads and examine them to see if there is some inconsistency or not. And what is the central theme of them? So this is what is called Samandvaya. So Samandvaya is a technical word which the closest thing to English translation would be consistency. It means that no matter what language you are using, what examples you're using, they're really they were talking about the same thing. Like, for example, let me just give you one example of that. You may have an example of avichinna. This is called avichinna-vada. In fact, we are going to talk about this in the next class, the Drikdishya Viveka, and even do a meditation on that. I'm planning to do that in the very next class. But anyway, there is a way of explanation which is called avichinna-vada. What avichinna-vada is the transformation of truth into a relative truth. You cannot say untruth, but a transformation of truth into relative truth with the help of a kind of a upadhi which is an adjunct upadhi, which is an enclosure. The best example is, I'm giving you all the technical aspects of that. Best example is that of total space as well as a room space. It's called avichinna-vada. So the avichinna-vada means that space has never really been transformed into a room space. But it is taken as a room space. Yes, of course. I don't have enough capacity in the room, I want to expand this. You cannot argue with the person and say, it's space, why are you doing that? But from a Vyavaharika standpoint, you could say, don't give me all that BS. I am looking for a bigger room. I want to expand this room. I want to expand this space. Well, even though you cannot expand the space, you feel like expanding the space. This is called avichinna-vada. This is one thing. The other one is called pratibimba-vada. The pratibimba-vada means a reflection, a way of looking at things from a reflection. And so we have gone through all that example also, that if you look at yourself in a concave mirror, and I can never remember which one is which, you can really see yourself to be a fattened person or a very thin person. That doesn't mean that you have become fat, although you may be fat, you may have been eating a lot, it's very possible you may have gained weight, but not as much as the picture shows you. And so there is a sort of a distortion of truth into a relative truth. This is called Pratibimbavada. So the Samandwaya in this set of examples would mean if the Upanishad is talking about avachinna vada, vada means there's a way of explanation, and another Upanishad is talking about pratibimba vada, are they talking about the same thing or not? And there could be an objection. No, they're talking about different things. Jiva can be, should be looked at it this way, or it can be a completely different way. And so the resolution would be no. They are just examples of examining the same phenomena. So like that, this is what is called Samandwaya. So this is an Adhyaya which is devoted to understanding the central theme of all the Upanishads. There is a central theme. Now we have talked about it. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivaha Brahma Eva Natu Aparaha. This is the central theme. And so their examination in a very logical way constitutes the Samandvaya Adhyaya. Another looking at the Samandvaya Adhyaya is that Brahman is the central theme. Is Brahman the central theme or not? So here there are a lot of differences of opinion. So for example, in the Karma Kanda of Vedas, it is said karma is the central theme. You have to reform the karmas in your bailiwick. And if you keep doing it, you will get better and better and better. You will have better experiences. You will go to Swargaloka number 1, Swargaloka number 2, etc. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, it talks a little bit about this Krama Mukti. So you have a sequence of improvement. And so you have Manushya. So the very famous one, this is called Manushyananda. Then the next one is Manushya Gandharvananda. Then comes Deva Gandharvananda. Then comes Pitra Loka Lokanam Ananda. Then comes Ajanajanam Ananda. Then comes Karma Devanam Ananda. Then comes Devananda. Then comes Indrasyananda. Then comes Brihaspaterananda. Then comes Prajapatehi Ananda. Then comes Brahmana Ananda. So there you have all these sequences of Ananda. And if you do the right kind of karma and also accompany it with upasana, you can actually get there. So therefore, there is an interpretation that Brahman is not the central theme, karma is the central theme. And we say no. Karma is also a krama mukti. Krama mukti is not really real mukti, that is sadhya mukti is the real mukti. And then you have to prove it. You cannot just say it and just walk out of the room and saying, okay, this is the way it is. This is not how it works. You have to convince your own mind or somebody else that this is not the central theme. So this is another view of Samandvaya Adhyaya. Okay? Then another way of looking at Samandvaya Adhyaya is from the standpoint of the steps required for me to fulfill my promise, which is Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. And Shravana means there is something being said about me which is totally contrary to my view of myself. Totally contrary, completely different. And what is said is that, listen, you think you are part of this samsara, and you are being tossed around by the experience of the samsara, isn't it? So we say, yes, of course, we know that. This is totally wrong. You're not. You are independent of the samsara. Samsara is just nothing but a wrong imposition that you put on yourself. It has nothing to do with you. This is what is being said. So at first we ignore it. We say, I don't know, this is just somebody who's just trying to be nice to me and so on. That's so far removed from my reality of everyday life. You can just turn to your spouse really and say, what do you think, honey? Is this what Vedanta says? What do you think? And he or she, since I'm a he, I will just say she, will laugh at you. She will kind of like snicker, a little bit of a snicker and a little bit of a giggle. Giggle and snicker, she'll say, what are you talking about? Just please wash those dishes. That's all that I expect you to do. Forget about Vedanta. So this is so contrary to our experiences that at first we don't even seriously think about it. This is exactly what happens. You go and supposing you post a ad in the local newspaper and say, we are starting a class of self-awareness which will lead you to total freedom. And people are looking at the newspaper ads and so on and so forth. One of them is where to get your vaccination. Another one is total freedom through self-awareness. What are people going to do? I say, I don't know. It's some other crazy people who are saying all this. So you disbelieve it in the beginning. Then you go knock around your different ways and so on. And what is that famous verse in Mundaka Upanishad? Pariksha lokan karmachitan ayat brahmana nasti akritaha kritena tat vijnanartham gurumeva bhikachet shotriyam brahmanishtam. This is a very important verse, really. It needs to be understood. He says, Pariksha lokan karmachitan. Just please examine the entire spectrum of your life's experiences. Examine them. Not saying don't look into that. Has it given you a permanent happiness? Has it? Be honest with yourself. Make an accounting of it. And then don't you know that it is possible? I'm so resigned to the fact that maybe it is not possible. But if it is not possible, I would not even be looking for it. Continuously, as soon as one experience is finished, maybe a bad experience, but I'll say maybe the next one will be better. But hope is already there. So the only possibility is that there is a hope. Look into that. And all I'm saying is that this is what is called Shravanam. Pretty soon you put your hand on your mouth and say, well, maybe I should look into that. And I think a lot of that has to do by not only the teaching but also the teacher. This is an important thing to look at it, because if you have to see who is saying it. what is that person? Is he someone who is trustworthy or not? Is he truthful and honest or not? And if you examine the life and thoughts of that person, if you are free to do so, you find there is a certain commitment, and so you want to look into that. This is why Swami Vidyaranya ji says that my own experience is that the students come to me because they examine me as a teacher, and they don't understand the entire set of literature. They don't have time to do that. They don't have the ability to do that. But if you just go to a satsang and you say, well, I like that person, like the way he's saying it. Not like it, but saying, I want to really look into that. This is what happens. So this is the Shravanam part. And the Shravanam, just to complete this thought, is in the Samandwaya Adhyaya, is not just casual listening. If you look at the lectures of Swami Paramarthananda, he says that Shravanam means consistent study for a long period of time. Not just one or two classes, then you go away and then... No. Because this is a very subtle subject which requires a complete dedication, and this is how you break down your own, not for anybody else, but for your own self. This is how you break down your own doubts about it and so on. So this is called Shravanam. So the Samandwaya Adhyaya, to summarize, does this. It is devoted to a thorough examination of everything that Vedanta is trying to convey to you with various examples, various logical arguments, various ways of looking at it, all those kinds of things. That is all done in this first chapter called the Samandwaya Adhyaya, sorry, not Adhikara, Adhyaya. And the word Samandvaya here is an important one because it is devoted to understanding what is the central theme. They call Samandvaya Adhyaya. And so this is Shravanam, Shravana Param. And in fact, this is epitomized by the fourth sutra that we will study, means Tattu Samandvayat. So the word Samandvaya is specifically mentioned in the fourth sutra that we will be studying. Okay, so this is the first adhyaya. The second adhyaya is now Mananam Para. Mananam Para. So the sequence of the way we should study all this is first thoroughly examine what is being said. What is the view of the wisdom? And not a casual understanding, but a thorough understanding. Examine it. And so this was Samandvaya, which is called Shravanam. Then you now have to poke holes into it from your own experience. Don't even take anybody else's viewpoint as your own. If you want to do it, sure. But your own experiences will laugh at you. I am the same as Brahman? How can that be? I can't believe it. You don't have to go to your spouse or anything. Your own experiences will laugh at you. But does that mean that there was some kind of a make-believe where people were trying to make you look better? Or is there some truth to it? Are they selling you something? They want something in back? This is why in our Sampradaya, one should never charge for this Vidya. It is sacrilege. It is sacrilege to charge for this Vidya. Because this is not something that is so, there's no value to it. And anyone that charges money for it, there are some organizations, what is it called? The Shri Ravi Shankars. I was talking to my sister one time because she was following the program of Shri Ravi Shankars. What's it called? Anyway, whatever the name is, I forget. I'm getting old. Words don't come to me anymore. It's just amazing. It's a very beautiful thing to see that how with the facility where words and all of those are easily available, slowly recede into the background. It's a really, one should really examine this and see the beauty of it in some ways. In fact, we're going to talk about this in the Purusha Suktam class on Tuesday night. This is called Manaha and Chandra. Manaso Chandran Jayate. This very concept of forgetfulness and how it can turn into pleasure is examined in that. So this is on the Tuesday night class. Anyway, so I was talking to my sister one time and asking her why. She says, they're just offering a new class on Upanishads. And I said, that's good, wonderful. They're doing that. She says it's $1,500. I think she said some more than that. It was $1,500 in the US, and she was asking what's the rupees. So I was surprised. I says, they're charging for it? She says, yes, they are saying that unless we charge for it a considerable sum, then people will not take it seriously. So I said, oh, interesting. It's a good argument to collect some money. Good argument. And I'm reminded of a stupid thing that we once did. After the PRC class, of course we were all excited about sharing this knowledge to others and so on, and collecting some people for talks and so on. So one time we decided, why don't we make this into a ticketed event? This is the stupidest thing that we could have possibly have done, but in the anxiousness to collect more people, we tried that once. And I must say, yours truly was the person behind it. So really, I am to blame. And Swamiji didn't say anything. I was saying, let's try that. In my thinking that I'm a very practical person. We were raked over the coals. No one liked it. And we said, never again. Anyway, so here, priceless. This is a priceless thing. So what I'm saying is, what my idea was that no one is saying it for any personal gain of theirs. This is something which is so amazing that it has to be just shared, that's all. No proselytizing is necessary. And so this is part of the mananam. So the mananam means now poke holes into Shravanam. And look into what are the discontinuities. Now, Shravanam should include the way I should reconcile seeming discontinuities. It should tell me that also. It's not like saying, this is the way it is, you go figure it out on your own. Shravanam will say, listen, at first you will not understand it. And here are the reasons why you will not understand it. But in order to understand, follow the following path. So even the logical reasoning, which is called tarka. Tarka is called logical reasoning. So this is called shushka tarka, or tarka which is shastra anukula tarka. So look at these two things. One is shushka tarka, which is dry tarka, dry logic. And the other one is Shastra Anukula Tarka, means a logic which is being suggested by Shastra to say this is how you should analyze. So I'll give you an example of that. Shushka Tarka is, people will say, where is God? Has anybody seen God? No one has seen God. So there is no God. This is called Shushka Tarka. Means that it sounds very logical. It sounds very logical. Why? Because if there is a God, then he or she must be visible. We cannot take anything which is not visible to be real. The very famous example of Swami Vidyaranya, which says Gagabugain. What is Gagabugain? Can you show me what Gagabugain is? No one can show you. He says, no, Gagabugain asti. There's no such thing as Gagabugain. This is just your imagination. So God is also like an imagination. Where is he? He's called Shushka Tarka. Then the Shastra Anukula Shastra is, you are the God. Don't you see that without your consciousness, nothing is possible? In fact, what you are calling it as your consciousness is God's consciousness. You are superimposing it on yourself. So, if you are if you're one of the waves of the ocean, you're looking at where is the ocean. You are the ocean. You are taking yourself to be just a small part of the ocean, which is wrong. So this is what is called Shastra Anukula Tarka. And so the Mananam, which is the second chapter, which is called the Avirodha Adhyaya. Avirodha Adhyaya. And this Adhyaya is the biggest portion of Brahmasutra. Biggest portion. And so this is what is called Avirodha. Avirodha means Virodha means that one is opposed to the other. One viewpoint is opposed to the other. Here Avirodha means that even though there are different viewpoints, they are not opposed to each other. They are simply ways of looking at it in different ways. So for example, this is also a kind of like a examination of the first Samandwaya Adhyaya, that various Shrutis that are talking about are really not Avirodha. They're not saying different things. They're saying the same thing. And so there is no Virodha between Shruti and Smriti. So what Bhagavad Gita is saying, or Manusmriti is saying, is exactly the same thing. This is also part of the Avirodha. And the third one, which is most important, is there is no Avirodha between Shruti and Yukti. Shruti means what is being said, and Yukti means logic, tarka. So I think that example that I just went through could be used here, that you can say you can say, for example, that I don't know what Vedanta is saying, Shastra is saying. I don't see a God. So what are they saying? So what they're saying is that where you are looking, you are not going to find a God. It's called avirodha. That I'm saying the same thing as you are, that the way you're looking at the God, you're not going to find it. But what I'm saying is that there is another way to find God. Look at it from my standpoint. It's called Shruti Yukti Avirodha. There is no opposition to what you're saying. I also agree with you. If you keep on looking, where is God? Where is God? Is it in Milpitas? Is it in San Jose? You're not going to find it because it's everywhere. It's you. You are everywhere. No matter where you are in your life, you are there. This is Brahman. You have to look at it that way. It's called Shruti Yukti Avirodha. So, the second Adhyaya is devoted to Mananam. And really speaking, this is the biggest portion of Brahmasutra. And in fact, it epitomizes that it takes a lifelong thinking. Unless you and I are very blessed. I remember reading a biography of Ramana Maharshi. It was written by a Western author. I forget the name of the book. Very early on, about 30, 40 years ago. And I remember the line from that book. It says that what it takes most people a lifetime of thinking to understand the reality of oneself, Ramana Maharshi was able to do it in a matter of 2-3 years, almost instantly. This is the beauty of someone who has done all of that in the previous life, is ready. So anyway, all I'm saying is that Mananam is the lifelong occupation of stripping away all of the wrong notions about who you are, what you're doing, what others are doing to you, and find that within the consistent pattern which has been talked about in the Shastra. So this is called Mananam, which is the second one, which is called Avirodha. Then the third Adhyaya is called Sadhana Adhyaya. So the Sadhana Adhyaya is specifically meant, and all these are not as though you do one and then you go to the second one, then you go to the third one. They're all mixed together. So sadhana, for example, means the means to understand, the means to gain moksha. So the means to understand is also mananam. You see? But here, all the specific sets of disciplines that one follows is being talked about in a given area, not a given area, but in a given segmentation. And so this is called Sadhana Adhyaya. And so this is what for those of us who are not sannyasis, and none of us are sannyasis, this becomes a very important thing. How do I dedicate my life in a way where I can see that everything that I do is contributing to my progress? Am I going in the right direction? Because I'm busy doing things, I have responsibilities, I have interests, I have desires, like any human being. How do I massage them in the way that I'm really going in the right direction? So this is what's called sadhana. And so all the various forms of sadhanas will be examined in this adhyaya. And so this is the third adhyaya. Then the last adhyaya is called Phala Adhyaya, which is the smallest. And this is a summary of the two kinds of moksha. It's segmented into two segmentations. One is called Krama Mukti and one is called Sadhya Mukti. And so the Krama Mukti, so this has, I have really not gone through this one specifically, so I am just talking about what Swami Paramarthananda and Swami Dayanandji have been saying. So I'm just giving you a second-hand view of this. But I understand where it is and I don't need to really study it, so it's not I'm missing anything. So pretty much the same theme which is in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the role of karma towards the moksha and the role of jnanam towards the moksha. The karma is a krama mukti, jnanam is the sadhya mukti. And if you're ready for sadhya mukti, then you don't need to do karma. But if you're not, then you have to fulfill certain duties of life in such a way that the karma becomes a karma yoga. And then through the karma yoga, when you're ready, then you don't need to worry about it. Then the kartritvam, bhoktritvam, the doership and enjoyership, it just becomes a kind of like a secondary thing. It has nothing to do with you. And so that whole examination of the phalam, of the moksha, is examined in these Phala Adhyaya. For once I am on time. The last few times I've been overstepping and we don't leave enough time for questions. Today I decided I'm going to stop at about 9:10 and it is 9:11 just now. So with that I close the class, say the remaining prayers, and then we will see if there are any questions and have a little bit more time for satsang. Okay. So let's start the second 5 verses of Dakshinamurti Stotram. Om Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadisho Maya Samachadinat Sanmatra Karanopasamharanato Yo Bhut Sushuktaf Puman Pragaswap Samiti Prabodha Samaye Yapatyavigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarvasvavasthasvapi vyavrittasvanuvartamanahamidyantaspurantam sada swatmanam prakatikaroti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Vishvam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharyataya Tathaiva Pitruputratyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrativaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bhuram Bhamsya Nalo Nilo Ambar Maharnartho Himam Shufpuman Ityabhati Chara Charatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat kinchana vidyate vimrishatam vyasmat parasmat vibho tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Sarvatvamatvam Sarvatmatvibhut Sarvatmatvamiti Sputikritamidam Yasmadamushminstave Tenasya Shravanat Tadarthamananat Dhyanat Sankirtanat Sarvatmatva Mahavibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhye Tatpunarashtradha Parinatam Chaishwaryam Avyahatam Ashubhani Nirachashte Tanoti Shubhasantatim Smriti Matrena Yatpumsam Brahma Tanmangalam Param Ati Kalyana Rupatvat Nitya Kalyana Samshrayat Smartranam Varadatvat Cha Brahma Tanmangalam Viduhu Omkaraschatha Shabdascha Dvavetau Brahmanah Pura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasmat Mangilakau Vubhau Omata Omata Omata. Art of living, yes, sorry. It's amazing how these words escape one, but yes, avirodha means the absence of opposition, yes. There's a new name, Akostolne. So I'm not sure who you are, but if you could send me an email with some information about yourself, I'd appreciate it. Don't see any questions that I need to answer, but I'll wait for a while in case you want to think about it. Yeah, but Raji, what is the relevance of Omata instead of Om Shanti? So, Raji, what it says is that, in fact, the verse itself defines, the verse itself gives you the answer. So if you look at the verse, it says, Omkarascha atha shabdascha dvau etau brahmanah pura kantham bhitva viniryatau tasmat mangilikau bhau. So it says that Brahmaji, the Hiranyagarbha, when at the beginning of the Kalpa, it started with a creation, the so-called creation. The creation means it's not a new creation. It's kind of like, when you and I wake up in the morning, it's a new beginning for the day. And it's not a new beginning because it's a continuation of the old one. Anyway, so from that perspective, it's not a new one. But anyway, in the beginning of the Kalpa, Brahmaji thought of two words and spoke it. One is Omkara, Om, and the other one is called Atha. So this word Atha is something we are going to look into in more detail in part of the Brahmasutra itself. What is Athato Brahma Jigyasa? Athato is the very first word of the entire Brahmasutra. And the first sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Means Atha, Ataha. What is Atha? A lot of discussion about that. So Atha means thereafter, now thereafter. It's a continuation. And because Brahmaji spoke it, therefore it is something which is very sacred. Very first word that he spoke. So the answer to your question, Raji, is given in the verse itself. Omkarascha atha shabdascha dvau etau brahmanah pura. These two words were talked about by a Brahman. And kantham bhitva. Kantham bhitva means as soon as the words came out, because the words are spoken by a particular configuration of the mouth. This is how the word sounds come out. So kantham bhitva viniryatau. This is how it was made. Tasmat mangilakau bhau. So therefore both of them have a special meaning, which is special blessing, not special meaning, special blessing. Mangilikau. Mangalavakya. So in traditionally, when Brahmasutras are recited, this is done. I'm just following the tradition. Chaula, details you gave for reference material, do we need to go through or just a suggestion? Isn't just the Brahmasutra, 4 mantras are enough for the part to Nividya? Yes. I think, Chala, you're absolutely right. I'm just giving it to you so that if those of you who have some interest in looking into it in more detail, you could do it, but you don't really need to. I think as it is, but at least initially you should just stick to the reading of the Bhashya itself. And then later on, if you say, I need to clarify things, and if I am not here, you want to do it on your own, then these secondary reading materials might be useful. Yes, so I totally agree with you. Someone, 7 a.m. 11, I don't know who the person is, who says, do we plan to understand each of the 10 Dakshinamurti Stotram at some point in course before delving into the first 4 Adi Karanas? So I think I mentioned this somewhere before. Here is my plan. Okay, this is not a course on Dakshinamurti Stotram. That takes a long time. We have taught that twice or even 3 times. Each time it takes more than a year of understanding the text. Having said that, what I had mentioned earlier on was a plan of my own, which is the following. The Brahmasutra becomes highly logical and therefore dry and doesn't leave a lot of time for revealing the Satyam. I assume that you already have been exposed to the Shravanam, and so the sutras themselves tend to be much more Mananam. Even though the Samandwaya Adiayas goes through that, but even that is very, very, very logical and so on. So therefore, what I was thinking, that I will intersperse. It won't be Dakshinamurti Stotram first, then go into Brahmasutra. I will intersperse going through each of the 10 Dakshinamurti Sutra in a very short introduction. And I'm thinking that perhaps we could have each one be encapsulated in a meditation. So we can just do a meditation on, and those of you that have taken these classes with me in the past have known that in following Swami Maheshananji's his direction, each of the 10 Dakshinamurti Stotram has one central theme. And so I will take up that one central theme. It of course has a lot of different concepts, but wrapped around one each concept in the 10 different verses. So I will do meditation and maybe some explanation of Dakshinamurti Stotram, but it will not all be unmasked in the beginning. It will be interspersed as we go along. That's the plan. So we'll follow that. So Surjit Dikshit says, following up on last week's discussion, would it be appropriate to say that Arthapatti is behind Aparoksha Anubhuti? Well, yes, in a way, in the sense that when you say behind Aparoksha Anubhuti, so I'm just looking at your words carefully, you are not saying Arthapatti is Aparoksha Anubhuti, you're saying it is behind Aparoksha Anubhuti. So yeah, really speaking, Surjit, everything is behind Aparoksha Anubhuti. Aparoksha Anubhuti is a Sakshat Karanam, it's a direct view of yourself as the Brahman. That is the Aparoksha Anubhuti. That Ishvara is not separate from you, it is you. That is the Aparoksha Anubhuti. So everything leads to it. All the arguments, even Pratyaksha, Anumana, everything, including Arthapatti, etc. So Arthapatti is not singularly important in leading to Aparoksha Anubhuti. Everything, all the things are. Having said that, it is a very important element to understand why the doubts that you are a limited person has to be removed. So the essence and the value of thinking through all of the Vedanta Shastra Vakyas is to remove your doubts about it. In that sense, Arthapatti plays a very important and a major role. How, as we talked about it, that something is given to you as a fact. So the example that we saw was that if you just got out of the house and started taking a walk on the street, you find, my goodness, there is so much water. This is a fact. You cannot argue with the fact. It's a fact. The question is how? How could that have happened? Because when you went to sleep it was dry. When you got up it is dry. There's no rain. Well, especially in India, you can have a sudden burst of something. There's a lot of rain can follow within 15 minutes. And so now, because of the fact that you see, there is only one explanation. That's it. You didn't see it. There is no pratyaksha. There's no smoke, no nothing or anything. It is a factual understanding that has to come up with a reasoning which is a valid reasoning. So similarly here, I have an experience that I am the same person in all my life. This is the fact. Even though I am growing from a child to a adult to all of those changes and so on, in and through, I am I and I'm I. This is a fact. How? This is a fact. It's like there is a lot of water. This is a fact. Everybody's fact. You're not different people. It's not as though the one who went to sleep last night, you woke up in the morning and you say, oh wow, who am I? I'm a new person. No, it's the same person. So despite all the changes that occur into your paraphernalia, you're the same person. This is a fact. How? There it is said, because just like you say rain fell, you have to say that you are Swayam Siddha Swayam Jyoti. You are not dependent on anything. This is called Arthapatti. And so this is an important doubt remover. All the Shastra examples are doubt removers. And until all the doubts are removed, you are not going to be convinced. This is an important doubt remover. So the Arthapatti, like anything else, is also behind Aparoksha Bhuti, but not alone. There are lots of other things. That's kind of like. Surendra says, isn't Arthapatti multi-step Anumana? Yes, it's a multi-step Anumana. Swami Dayanand used to say that. And technically that is correct, but you know what? It didn't do much for me. It didn't really, it's technically correct, multi-step. But really what hit me when Swami Maheshananji was pointing this out about the meaning of Arthapatti, that there is no connection, but it's a fact that you have to understand. And so yes, it is a multi-step Anumana, but an explanation of Arthapatti in terms of looking backwards from the fact, not arriving it sequentially, but accepting that the fact, not accepting, seeing that the fact is there, and the only plausible example for that is that rain came. So the only plausible, not example, or plausible cause for that is that aham swata siddha. This is a very powerful thing when you think about it. So anyway, that's what it is. Thank you, Zarina. Good. I think we are over time. So thank you all, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Om.